Hi, I'm Teresa Huizar, your host of 1 in 10 and also the CEO of National Children's Alliance. I grew up in a very small town, so small that it had more chickens and cattle than people. And one of the things that was really impactful is the fact that there was very little social services or child protection presence at all. In fact, if you needed a social worker, they were on a circuit riding system and came to town once a month. So whether you needed your social security check or you were an abused child that needed help, it was one time a month or nothing. And so when you think about what that meant in terms of all the struggles in the community in between, how little resources, how few ways of getting any help, that's really landed with me that for so many of our listeners in so many places around the country, we know that help is not just a quick phone call away, that there are gaps in services that exist. And so this idea of making sure that every child has access to a children's advocacy center and that abused kids, no matter where they live, have access to services is something that has just really resonated with me since I was a child. I came to the CAC movement by serendipity. Or fate, however one might want to think about it, in that one of my first jobs out of college was to do body safety presentations in schools. And so I was there ostensibly to prevent child abuse, right? To talk about child abuse prevention. And so when I took the job, I thought that it was going to be wonderful, just help kids never have to deal with abuse. And instead what happened, in the first couple of years that I did that job, I talked to about 10,000 kids in school classrooms, and kids disclosed abuse all the time. So, during the course of a day, it was not uncommon for me to have to make a child abuse report because of what was disclosed as I was going from classroom to classroom. And teachers would hear this outcry. They wouldn't have any sense of what they needed to do about that. And I just thought there has to be a better way than this. I certainly grew up in the Children's Advocacy Center movement, and it grew me up, over the course of the last 24, 25 years. And there's just been so much change during that time. When I was a CAC director of my first Children's Advocacy Center, there were, maybe 100, 200 in the movement. Now there are 933 Children's Advocacy Centers. Also, I would say a big change has been the science. We now know a lot about the science of our work, and that's why I was so passionate about the 1 in 10 podcast. When I was a CAC director, I really wish I had had the sort of latest access to the brightest minds trying to deal with this problem. And it would have made all the difference in the world in my practice. Instead, I would try to read journal articles or try to find the time to attend a conference here or there, but I knew I was missing some science. And I think that one of the biggest shifts in our work as we now benefit from this body of literature about the work itself, what works, what doesn't work, areas we're still exploring. And I want to bring that information to child abuse professionals so that they can just, as soon as that information is available, they have it in their hands and can change practice to really match what the science is saying. One of the most surprising things about this podcast is just how many bright minds are working on this difficult problem of child abuse. When I started out the podcast, when I first had the idea, I came to Blake, our director of communications, and I just sprang this idea that, for Child Abuse Prevention Month, 1 month in April, we do a 4-part podcast series. And that really came from my love of podcasts and listening to them and feeling like there should be something about child abuse. In searching, I couldn't find anything that I thought was really science-based and not just someone sort of pontificating about things. And we never expected to be here years later. We never expected to find so many researchers doing such great work. I don't know where this will end, but there's no end in sight because it's not difficult to find people who are doing fascinating, interesting work that can be applied today to the work that we're doing as child abuse professionals, whether it's within prevention or intervention or the criminal justice system or some other aspect of that, aspects about how poverty impacts it or other kinds of things. There's just no end to the topics. I know how committed you are to helping kids get better, and I know that you care about child abuse or you wouldn't even be watching me talk right now. So I just invite you to join the community of listeners on 1 in 10. I think that we're all trying to learn and do better in our practice together. And I invite you to be a part of that conversation.